Bismillah. Continuing with where we were. So, by universal religion, I mean the universal inmost meaning and structure of every religion. And again, we need to even understand what we mean by religion. And I'll explain that. Um, Essentially, according to this philosophy, I have a way to explain what we mean by religions, by belief systems, and bring it down to a very simple unitive core. But let's delay that just for a time being, because we have this rough understanding of what religion is. We have a rough understanding of the main belief, ideas, and systems in the world. And what I want to do is to simply try to sketch out to some detail what exactly I'm going for here. I want to sketch out this vision I have of the oneness of being, particularly in its practical form. What does this actually look like? And I put this before more theoretical elaborations, more visionary expositions, because most people are more practically minded. The most questions I get I mean, what exactly does this look like? What exactly are you doing? What exactly is this philosophy? And hopefully this will give something of the picture of its grounded reality. But essentially, let me spell out the following ideas. So, there is one single primordial tradition at the very ancient outset of humanity. There's one tradition. This tradition is the unity of man and God. And we can think about that more in times to come, what it means to have revelation, what it means to have a connection of man and God. But let's begin with this idea that there's a mystical connection of man to the reality of things, to the source of things. That's what this tradition is. It's like the umbilical cord which connects the baby to the mother. And we have this spiritual umbilical cord still attached to us, ever connected to us, flowing between ourselves and the source of all reality, and the source of our spirit. So there's something deep in the past, burrowed in the echelons of time, an inmost tradition which is resounding forwards, and every other civilization and tradition is going to take forth from this. I suppose if you want to think about this from a more anthropological and evolutionary perspective, I would say that, well, as far as we know, humanity emerged from one area, from what we might call Africa or something of that sort. So I imagine it was one community to some degree, and that one community had some tradition. And that tradition was a spiritual tradition, because undoubtedly there was a physical tradition. Humans have physical traditions. That's how we survive. We pass down our physical knowledge, how to hunt, how to swim, how to do these things. And we have mental knowledges, because there can be no physical arts and praxis without a mental theoretical equivalent. But even beneath this mental knowledge, there was a spiritual knowledge, because the source of all knowledge and the source of all becoming is being. So in the origins of humanity, there's this primordial tradition. And as humanity branches and flowers forth into different tributaries, different generations, and the different nations spread throughout the earth, it's carrying this primordial tradition, and it's going to evolve into different forms. But the inmost kernel, being the same, will be one and the same in all these different forms. There's also this idea of the perennial philosophy, which is the same thing articulated from a slightly more philosophical and abstract manner, that there is one universal truth, because truth is formless. Forms will differ according to their appearance and representation, but the thing they represent, the thing symbolized by these different symbols, is one and the same, because in their own words, each way is pointing towards the truth, and there is one truth at the center. So even if each one speaks truly and it speaks towards the truth, then that means, right, pay attention to this carefully, if each tradition is speaking truly that it points towards the truth, then each religion and tradition is agreed that they all point towards the same truth. Another way this is described is as a mountain. The forms of religion it's like the base of the mountain, and a mountain itself has a pyramidal structure, right? So at the base, yes, there's different forms because that's the structure, But the very idea of the circumstructure, of the circumcircle, is to lead upwards on an ascent. I mean, the forms of religion only have meaning, should only be observed if they truly have some meaning to lead inwards. If they don't, it's an empty form, it's a form without content. And as you follow this path upwards towards the truth, the different circumstructures are going to start to converge. And the higher you go, the more you can look down upon where you have come from, and you start to see that the similar traditions around the base of the circle are now starting to converge. And the higher and higher you go, you see that things you thought were more and more distant and apart, beliefs you thought were completely contradictory, actually start to become reconciled. And if you reach the truth, the summit of enlightenment, you would see that the end is one and the same. And now this whole thing would be even more reinforced and buttressed if each individual manifestation of this truth actually contains this symbol and this relationship of the pyramid and of the mountain. If each nodal point at the base is itself saying that yes, there is one summit that we will go up to. And in fact, I wish I added something else here, but by this picture of the mountain, I think we really mean the mystical kernel, the heart of each religion. And I'd say that each religion, at least to my knowledge and to my understanding, does profess of its heart. I mean, the tradition I'm familiar with is the Abrahamic tradition, in particular the Islamic tradition. I mean, Islam is very clear, the Quran is very clear that what this is all about, what all these forms point towards, is the oneness of God. And the ultimate point of all of this, of all the forms and rites and symbols, the ultimate purpose of this is the knowledge of God. And even the idea of worshipping God, the most fundamental rite, is passed as knowledge of God. What it means to worship God is to know God. And that is actually the original meaning of worship, which is worthship, i.e. to be worthy. And something is worthy when it is filled with awe and reverence and respect. So to worship God is to know the worth of God. So to know the worth of God. And that's by knowing the meaning and reality of God. And of course, really, if you study any religion, you'll find this kernel that, yes, you have the forms which are being practiced, but the forms center around an inward dimension. And in Islam, you call this Sufism or Tasawwuf or Ihsan. There's an inward dimension. And this inward dimension, like circles collapsing into themselves, has the inmost point, which is the center of this mountain. So in fact, you see that each religion is actually self-conceiving itself reflexively as this mountain itself. That the picture of the mountain is actually involuted into the picture of its own religion. That the religion is the mountain. That inside of the religion you have to go into this inward journey and find the mountain peak. So I've spoken of the universal religion, the primordial tradition, the perennial philosophy. And these ancient religions, these must be of importance. They must be of import because the ancient comes before the modern and before we can speak of any more recent religions. And to some degree, I put this here because even the Abrahamic religions, to a great degree, are modern religions. They're modern in the grand scheme of things. Even going all the way back to the ancient Hebrew religion, well, that's coming out of a milieu, and more we have an understanding of history and the influences on the Hebrew conceptions of being. The Babylonian sources, and more deeply the Egyptian sources. There's certainly there, of course, Hellenistic influence is everywhere. So we have to begin with the understanding of the ancient as far as we can go. And because in these ancient mythologies we begin to see this perennial philosophy, we begin to see this universal structure. As we go more and more back, the idea is that these forms should start to converge. And I'd say that they do. If you study ancient mythology and ancient religion, you see that the forms do converge a lot. And the further back you go, you see more recurrent archetypes. Like all these biblical stories, they're archetypes. They're archetypical stories which are represented again and again, simulatively in various cultures and languages and settings and geographies. But then why do we have this idea of the ancient, we have this idea of the universal. Why are we then singling out the Abrahamic tradition? Well, in a sense, there's many ways you can go with this. The Abrahamic argument that this is the universal truth. But then, of course, you can come from this direction and come with this history and that history. I think the most simple argument, and really we don't begin up here as we would like to, because we don't begin with an empty slate and you're a baby and you have the next 50 years just to really make sense of things. No, you're born into an environment. It is my environment, and I think the environment of the vast majority of people I'm speaking to, really all of them in a sense, is the Abrahamic tradition. It's already been chosen for us. It's not for us necessarily to choose. Whether we like it or not, we are Abrahamic peoples. We are Abrahamic descendants. And we say like Christianity and Islam basically compose most of the world. To a very deep degree, it's not just saying, oh yeah, this population is this population is that. No, I'm saying that the ideas, the architectonic of consciousness is Abrahamic. Even if people no longer practice or even understand these religions anymore, their very societies are built upon the foundations of this religion. And if we say these are the two world forces, of Christendom and the Islamic case, albeit in very, very degenerated forms now, and that's another thing to think about, the advent of modernity, but yet they have the same source, which is Abrahamic. So from that perspective, we already are Abrahamic. It's just an articulation of what is, rather than necessarily a proposal for what should be. It's descriptive rather than prescriptive, you could say. And of course we can make further connections about European civilization, in which I am based, and most of us are based, to the Judeo-Christian. We could speak about the Islamic a bit more. And I think this is a very vital connection, because in a sense we can understand history as in a Hegelian sense, as a series of syntheses and of theses and antitheses, and therefore syntheses. And really, one of the greatest and last antitheses we see now is what's called Islam and the West. And I think this is a very problematic term, and it's a misnomer in many cases, but clearly there's something going on, and if you just look at the news today, you can see that clearly there is some sort of tension, but we have to make sense of what that is. But in a sense, this is the ancient story of the East and the West. It's a story as ancient as the world itself. It goes all the way back to the Trojan War, one of the foundational stories, Homer for the Greeks. The foundational setting is an Eastern-Western conflict. And all of human history is seen as Eastern-Western divides to various degrees. A communication, and that communication is harmonious and violent, because war is also a means of communication. And so this idea of the Abrahamic tradition, at the very least, it provides the most unifying language to understand the world. And that's what was really the success of the Hebrews. The reason why Judaism and the Hebrew religion is this universal religion in a deep sense is because it was the best at synthesizing. You could say that the Hebrews did synthesize the nations around them and the other mythologies and cosmologies. And that's what the universal religion should do. It should be a universalizing force. If it's truly universal, it should be able to adapt easily. And I think that's what the Abrahamic tradition has done. The very fact that you have now 3 religions consecutively, all of which claim to be Abrahamic and really are Abrahamic, if you do a comparative study of them, they're clearly one and the same religion to a deep degree. I would say the Abrahamic tradition is the universal religion. Before that, we have ancient religions, but the Abrahamic synthesizes all these ancient mysteries together. And that brings me last to the Islamic synthesis, where I'm seeing, to me, I'm seeing Islam not as a religion. And this is where, I don't believe in religion as a system, a particular thing. Because as soon as you particularize religion, as soon as we say this is a particular form, you're destroying the very essence of it, which is universality. It's the universal message. And so, by these forms, we mean the meaning. And so, by all of this, I'm beginning from first principles. I'm not putting any claim to what these things are, to the Abrahamic, to the Islamic. It's still an empty book, and we're building upwards. And I don't mean by that I'm going to use these as convenient labels to, just plug things on, to hang convenient ideas on. Of course, you can always criticize anyone of doing that. But as I said, this is a vision. And by vision, I mean to explicate, I mean to construct and to build up. So I don't believe in really, debating and answering and allowing people to have challenges and to respond to challenges. Over here, I'm building up a vision. That's why I've written all these books. And all one has to do is to witness what's going on. And you can see it's not even about agreeing or disagreeing. I'm claiming that I'm articulating a vision. I am articulating something universal. If I'm true and I am articulating this universal thing, then let it be. It will happen naturally. There is nothing which needs to be done. There is no assent which needs to take place to either agree or to disagree, to be for or against it. It will be the case that as this palace is builded up, you will simply find yourself one of its rooms, without having moved yourself. And I believe that's what the universal religion is and what it is doing. It should never have to go and proselytize and to change people. It will naturally come around people without them even knowing it, without ever disturbing them or forcing them to change. It will simply reveal itself to them. And this whole vision is a revelation. Because all things are revelation. Nothing can be done in this world, but things are revealed. Nothing is acted upon, but things are enacted. All is passivity under the absolutity of the Godhead. All the manifold forms of manifestation are variations of the oneness of being. But I'm offering this term, Islamic synthesis. Why am I offering this? Well, for one, this is the vision as I see it. And I'll articulate this much more, but the inward kernel of Islam is the oneness of being. It's this universal philosophy. It's a universal religion of oneness. And that's what I'm beginning. I'm beginning in the inmost center, not with any form or particular rite. Let all these things go for now. I'm beginning with an idea of pure oneness. And that's why we begin here. Because it works for the time being. We begin with pure oneness. We go into the very, very center of this structure, of this Abrahamic traditional structure. And I'm not picking one or another, by Islamic synthesis, I mean Judaism plus Christianity plus Islam. I mean all three together. And that's what I mean. Because if we think of it in historical terms, they're building on top of each other. It's circles inside of circles. I mean the unison of all these things, this synthesis. And I also mean the synthesis of the ancient and the modern. Because all of the ancient world is gone. We live in a very different world now, the modern world. Religion is gone in the modern world, increasingly more and more. So, I wrote over here, the structure of universal religion. What I'm hoping to do is to build up the structure, the palisades, for the vision of the oneness of being. Because if this is a pure crystalline vision, if it is a pure luminosity beheld within the soul, then there must be unto it a body, a container, a receptacle, which holds it and allows it to flow. And the true structure, this true universal religion, must expand for it, because the vision shall not be constrained by anything. The vision shall not be constrained. The vision is infinite and must be infinite, and any structure which tries to hold it will be broken apart by it. So I'm rebuilding structure. I'm not inheriting anything at the moment. I'm allowing this. I'm taking this synthetic structure at the beginning. It's like an empty amniotic sac, and it's being filled up by this vision, and it's now going to expand, and it's going to grow naturally into the body of the universal religion. And so we begin not with the form, but we end with the forms, and we shall discover together what these forms are. And I believe this is a new synthetic constructed work which needs to take place. And I'm not here going to, at the outset, ally myself with one form or another. I think we need to have a very open mind and allow ourselves to see what the form shall be without preempting it or presupposing it or precluding it. So I shall speak about all this more to come, but what I hope I've done here is by just at least delineating the horizons of this vision, horizons which are not being built yet, I mean horizons which are not even here yet, but which will be as the vision itself flows forth in the spheres of being, as the vision literally overflows from one structure to the next, and it self-organizes what this universal religion is going to be. And the only principle which we need here is the principle of universality, of pure oneness. The principle that the vision should never be impeded or hindered at any stage. And so, I mean, to simply reiterate, I think this is perhaps the most important work which can be undertaken on earth at this moment in time. This is a work which we all need. And it's a work which, I mean, ultimately, at least this variation I have done on my own thus far, but I do hope that in the future I'll find support and I'll find help to continue to do this work. And I shall continue to articulate this vision, hopefully to great levels of crystalline detail and clarity in times to come. But I do hope, God willing, that this has been a prolegomenon to this great vision.